शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अंजनानंदनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशम् अक्षहंकारं वन्दे लंकाभयंकरं। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। Namaskaram all of you, and welcome to the 16th session of Narayaniyam. We are going to see today the glorious incarnation of Lord Kapila and his exposition of different paths to salvation, especially the lofty Sankhya philosophy that form a major part of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavata Mahapuranam, covered in detail in chapters 21 to 33 of Bhagavatam. As the fifth incarnation of Bhagavan, a part incarnation and the embodiment of pure Sattva Guna, Lord Kapila descended on the earth with a specific purpose, in his own words, of expounding the true nature of the principles so helpful in self-realization to those who seek release from their subtle body and to revive the mysterious path of self-knowledge which had become obscure since long. This Dasakam 14 of Narayaniyam deals with the story of Bhagavan Kapila, and the next one, Dasakam 15, gives us the message of Bhagavan in the form of Kapila, all of that concisely. The great Kavi Narayana Bhattadiri, after describing the Varaha incarnation and the reinstatement of the earth, now tells us how Swayambhuva Manu started once again his creation, ruling over the earth. Samanusmrita Tavakangri Yukmaha Samanusmrita Tavakangri Yukmaha Samanuhu Pankaja Sambhavang Janma Pankaja Sambhavang Janma Nijamantara Mantaraya Ginam Charitam Te Katayan Sukam Ninaya Nijam Antara Mantaraya Ginam Charitam Te Katayan Sukam Ninaya. Samanusprita Tavakangri Yugmaha Samanupangaja Sambhavanga Janma Nijamantaram Antarayahinam Charitam Te Katayan Sukam Ninaya. பிரம்மதேவரின் மகனான ஸ்வயம்புவ மனு தங்கள் இரு திருவடிகளையும் இடையராது தியானித்துக் கொண்டும் தங்கள் வரலாற்றையே ஓதிக்கொண்டும் தனது மன்வந்தர காலத்தை இடையூறின்றி இனிதே கழித்தார் என்கிறார் பட்டதிரி. In other words, Manu was spending his time of the entire Manvantara peacefully, administering the creation and taking care of his subjects with your grace, and constantly contemplating on your form and glory. Samaye kanu tatra gatramadyo Samaye kanu tatra gatramadyo Yuginachaya Bhavatadiyavada Samaye kanu
तत्र कद्गमाद्य रुगिणच्चाय भवत्तदीयवाच धृतसर्गरसो निसर्गरम्यं भगवो त्वाम् आयुतं समाह शिशेऽपि धृतसर्गरसो निसर्गरम्यं भगवं त्वाम् आयुतं समाह शिशेऽपि
समये खलु तत्र कर्धमाख्यो द्रुहिणच्चाय भवस्तदीयवाच धृतसर्गरसो निसर्गरम्यं भगवं स्वाम अयुतं समाहा சிஷேவே. பகவானே, அக்காலத்தில் பிரம்மதேவருடைய நிழலிலிருந்து தோன்றிய கர்தமர் என்கிற பெயர் கொண்ட பிரஜாபதி பிரம்மதேவரின் ஆணைப்படி படைப்பு தொழிலை செய்ய விரும்பினார். ஆகவே இயற்கையிலேயே அழகுமிக்க தங்களை 10,000 ஆண்டுகள் பூஜித்து தவம் புரிந்தார். At the same time, when Swayambhuva Manu was ruling his subjects very well, as mentioned in the prior verse, another Prajapati known as Kardama, as commanded by his preceptor Brahma, was getting interested to enter the activity of creation by following the marital dharma, once again as ordained by his Guru Brahma. As he knew that your grace, without which nothing is possible, is essential for creation, he engaged himself in penance for 10,000 years, worshipping you, who are so beautiful by nature and who delight the hearts of the devotees. It is stated in the Bhagavatam, Chayayaha Kardamo Jagne Devahutyaha Patiprabhuhu Manaso Dehataschedam Jagne Vishwakruto Jagat. The 27th slokam in the 12th chapter on the same 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. The Prajapati Kardama, the spouse of Devahuti and a master of his self, was created by Lord Brahma from his shadow. It is said that Kardama Prajapati did penance on the banks of river Saraswati. The Lord appears before Kardama Prajapati, and this is described in the next sloka.
Garudopadikalamegagramam vilasatyeni sarojamani patnu Atitolatitanam vibo tvam vapuravispurushesma kardamagi.
Garudopari Kalamega Kramam Vilasat Keli Sarojapani Padmam Asitol Asitananam Vibo Tvam Vapuhu Avishkurushesma Kardamaye. பிரபுவே, தங்கள் திருமேனி கார்முகம் போல மனோகரமானது. தாமரைப்பூ போன்ற திருக்கரத்தில் விளையாட்டாக தாமரை மலரை ஏந்திய வண்ணம் புன்முறுவலால் மலர்ந்த முகத்துடன் கருடன் மீது அமர்ந்து கர்தமருக்கு தாங்கள் திருமேனி காட்சியை அளித்தீர்கள் அல்லவா? The Lord, pleased with Kardama, blesses him.
Suvate ulagavudaya dasmai manuputri daitam navadiputri kapilam cha sutam swameva paschat swagatim chapi anugrihya nirgato kapilam cha sutam swameva paschat swagatim chapi anugrihya nirgato.
Stuvate purakavrutaya tasmai manuputrim dayitam navavi putrihi kapilam cha sutam swameva vasyad swagatim chapi anugrihya nirgato bhuhu. மெய் சிலிர்த்து தங்களை துதித்த அந்த கர்தமருக்கு பத்தினியாக மனுவின் மகளை குறிப்பிட்டு அவளிடம் 9 பெண்களும் தங்கள் அம்சமாக கபிலர் என்ற புத்திரனும் பிறக்கப் போவதாகவும் குறிப்பிட்டு கடைசியில் தங்களிடம் அவர் லயிக்கப் போவதையும் வரமாக அருளி மறைந்தீர்கள் அல்லவா? When Kardama prostrated before you, you blessed him. He was so thrilled on seeing you that his whole body was covered with the horripilation. Knowing his mind, you blessed him to marry Devahuti, the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, and get 9 daughters, and the 10th a son by name Kapila Vasudeva, a partial manifestation of yourself. You also blessed him with Saijya Mukti, the state of eternal bliss in union with the form of supreme consciousness that you are, and disappear from there. What has been mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam is that the Lord told Kardama thus: Swayambhuva Manu resides in the region known as Brahmavarta. He will be arriving here along with his wife Satarupa and his daughter Devahuti day after tomorrow to meet with you. He will be giving his daughter in marriage to you then and there. The phrase Kardamam Agati Pratiksham in the next verse that's going to be in Sloka 5 is a hint for the sentiment which I expressed just now. Swayambhuva Manu approaches Kardama Prajapati as instructed by Bhagavan Mahavishnu in Sloka 5 of Bhattadari.
Samanussatarubaya Mahishya Satarubaya Mahishya Gunavatya Sutayacha Devagutya Gunavatya Sutayacha Devagutya Bhavadirita Naradopavishtaha Bhavadirita Naradopavishtaha Samagate Kardamam Agati Pratiksham Kardamam Agati Pratiksham.
Samanuhu Satarupaya Mahishya Gunavutya Sutaya Cha Devahutya Bhavadirita Naradopavishtaha Samagate Kardamam Agati Pratiksham. தங்களால் ஏவப்பட்ட நாரத முனிவரால் உபதேசிக்கப்பெற்ற சுவாயம்புவ மனு தனது மனைவியான சதரூபையுடனும் நல்ல குணம் படைத்த மகளான தேவகூதியுடனும் தனது வரவை ஆவலுடன் எதிர்நோக்கிக் கொண்டிருக்கும் கர்தமரிடம் வந்து சேர்ந்தார். Thereafter sage Narada at your bidding went to Swayambhuva Manu. There, Devahuti was desirous of marrying one who was really worthy of her. Sage Narada approached her and described to her Kardama's nature, his appearance and his virtues. Devahuti became very happy on hearing this and decided to marry Kardama instantly. Thereafter, Sri Narada related to Manu about Kardama's excellent character and said, "You must get Devahuti married to Kardama because that will be the best choice." Manu agreed to sage Narada's advice and, accompanied by his wife Satarupa and daughter Devahuti, a repository of virtue, went to meet Kardama, who was awaiting Manu's arrival.
Manuno upagritam cha Devahuti Manuno upagritam cha Devahuti Karuni Ratnamavadya Kardamo Manuno upagritam cha Devahuti Karuni Ratnam Avadya Kardamo Bhavadarshana nirvitopi Asyam Trida Shushrushanaya Tadau Prasada Trida Shushrushanaya Tadau Prasadam.
Manunopagritam cha Devahutim Tarunuiratnam Avapya Kardamosau Bhavad Archana Nirvrutopi Tasyam Drida Shushrushanaya Dadhau Prasadam. அந்த கர்தமரும் மனுவினால் கன்னிகாதானம் செய்யப்பட்ட நாரீமணியான தேவகூதியை மனைவியாக அடைந்து பகவானே தங்களை பூஜிப்பதிலேயே நிலை பெற்றிருந்தாலும் மனைவியின் நிலைத்த உறுதியான பணிவிடையால் கவரப்பட்டு அவளிடமும் அன்பினை செலுத்தினார். As mentioned earlier, Manu arrived at Kardama's ashrama and gave his daughter in marriage to Kardama, along with innumerable presents, observing all marriage rites. Though Kardama got Devahuti, a jewel and embodiment of virtue who shone like a gem amongst women, he spent most of his time in worshipping you alone. All through this time, Devahuti, abandoning the normal passion, anger, and all other qualities, but focused only on you and becoming pure in thought, word, and deed, considered her husband as the Supreme Lord himself and served him with sincere devotion and undivided attention. She was able to comprehend Kardama's thoughts and act accordingly, and thereby winning his mind totally. Seeing her steady and blemishless devotion towards him, became very much pleased with her.
Sapunatvadupasana prabha Sapunaha Vadupasana prabhavat Daita kama krite krite vimane Daita kama krite krite vimane Kama krite krite vimane Vanita kula sankulo navatma Vyagarat deva pateshu devahutya
Sapunastudupasana prabhavad dayita kamakrite krite vimane vanitakula sankulo navatma vyaharat deva pateshu devahutya. மேலும் அவர் தங்களை வழிபட்டதன் பெருமையால் மனைவியின் விருப்பத்தை நிறைவேற்ற வேண்டி யோக பலத்தால் தேவவிமானத்தை உண்டு பண்ணி புதியதொரு அழகிய சரீரத்துடன் வானவெளிகளில் தேவகூதியுடன் கர்தமர் வலம் வந்தார். இங்கு வியாக்கியான கர்த்தாக்கள் ஒரு அழகான விஷயம் சொல்லுகிறார்கள். நவாத்மா என்பதற்கு 9 வித வடிவு கொண்டு தன் மனைவியிடம் மகிழ்ந்தார் என்கிறது பக்த பிரியம் எனும் வியாக்கியானம். In accordance with Devaguti's wish, Kardama, who was pleased with her sincere devotion to him, created an aerial car by virtue of the powers acquired by practicing yoga constantly and worshipping you. Again, with his yogic power, he assumed a new divine charming form and by your grace divided himself into 9 parts in order to produce 9 daughters by Devahuti. Surrounded by celestial damsels who became Devahuti's friends and servants, Kardama along with them traversed through and sported in Nandavanam, Pushpabhadram and Chaitraratham, the gardens frequented by Devas. In some of the texts, the word Vanitakula Sankule is found to be used in the locative case, or the Saptami we call it in Sanskrit, in place of Vanitakula Sankulaha. If this variant is followed, it has to be construed as qualifying Vimane. In this version, the phrase has been used in the nominative, which is more apt, looking at the description in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Sadavarshamadadvyatitya soyam Sadavarshamadastaditya soyam Avakanyaha Samavapya Danyarupaha Samavapya Danyarupaha Tadavarshamadavyaditya soyam Navakanyaha Samavapya Danyarupaha Anayana Samudyatobi Kanta Idakrit Vajjananotsuko Nyavasit.
Satavarshamatabhyatitya soyam navakanyaha samavapya danyarupaha vanayana samudyatopi kanta hitakritu tvajjananotsuko nyavatsit. இவ்வாறு அந்த கர்தமர் 100 ஆண்டுகளை கழித்து மிகவும் அழகிய 9 பெண்களை பெற்றெடுத்தார். பின்னர் துறவியாக வனம் செல்ல முயன்றவராயினும் தன் மனையாளுக்கு நன்மையை செய்ய விரும்பி அவள் விருப்பப்படியே தங்கள் அவதாரத்தை ஆவலாக எதிர்பார்த்து கொண்டு தேவகூதியினுடனேயே வாழ்ந்து வந்தார். In this manner, Kardama was living with all comforts with Devahuti for 100 years. Thereafter, he begot by her 9 beautiful daughters. Kardama decided to renounce attachment to mundane life and was about to proceed to the forest for doing penance. Even though he got prepared to leave for the forest, he had to stay back because Devahuti started crying and fell at his feet, requesting, "Oh Master, what can I do alone with these daughters if you leave for the forest at this stage? Who is there to find them suitable husbands and marry them off? Is it not our dharma? All these years were wasted by me, indulging in worldly life, deluded by Maya, and not attaining any self-knowledge at all, for which I really regret. My life would become fruitful if a son is born who will impart that Atma Jnanam or self-knowledge to me. Hence, you are going to the forest now is not the appropriate time. I cannot say it is improper, but it is not the appropriate time." Remembering your words, Kapilam cha sutam swameva, and to comfort Devahuti, sage Kardama stayed back, eagerly awaiting your arrival as Kapila Vasudeva, a partial manifestation of yourself. In the next slokam number 9, Bhattadri describes the incarnation of Kapila.
Nijabattu giramavan nishevan Itaraya mata devadeva kutyam Nijabattu giramavan nishevan Iratayam Ata devadeva kutyam Kapilastvamajayata jananam Kapilastvamajayata jananam Pratayishyan Paramatma Tattva Vidya Paramatma Tattva Vidya Vidya
Nijabartrugira Bhavan Nishevan Niratayamatam Deva Devahutyam Kapilastvam Ajayataha Jananam Pratayishyan Paramatma Tattva Vidyam. He Devadeva, தனது கணவருடைய சொல்லுக்கு இணங்கி தங்கள் சேவையிலேயே ஈடுபட்டிருந்த தேவகூதியிடம் உலக மக்களுக்கு பரம்பொருளின் 24 தத்துவங்களுடைய அறிவையும் புலப்படுத்த வேண்டி தாங்கள் கபில வாசுதேவராக அவதரித்தீர்கள் அல்லவா? O Lord, Kardama Prajapati, refraining from his journey to the forest to do penance, told Devahuti, "My beloved, very soon the Lord will enter into you. So practice yama niyama, penance, charity, and the worship of the Lord with much more attentive devotion than before." Accordingly, Devahuti took to worshipping the Lord with great devotion and faith. You incarnated in Devahuti as Kapila Vasudeva in order to proclaim to mankind the knowledge of the Supreme and the Sankhya philosophy in the Guru Sishya or the preceptor-disciple tradition, reflecting the 24 principles of nature which are known as the supreme truths. Who is Kapila? Why is his incarnation so significant that whatever he said to his mother for her queries came to be known as Kapila Gita? Let us now see the background and the various claims in regard to answering these questions. Panchamak Kapilo Nama Siddhesaha Kala Viplutam Provacha Suraye Sankyam Tattvagrama Vinirnayam. Bhagavatam says the fifth incarnation named Lord Kapila is foremost among perfected beings. Kapila gave an exposition of the creative elements and metaphysics to Asuri Brahmana, for in course of time this knowledge had been lost. Who said this exact sentiment? A background will be very useful here. When Suta Pauranika starts narrating the greatest of Krishna Kathamritam to Saunaka and all other Maharishis assembled in Naimisharanya, please remember that this is the third and final reiteration of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Suta talks to Saunaka and others, that we ever know of. First time it was the originator Krishna Dvaipayana Vedavyasa dictating to the scribe Mahaganapati the great Srimad Bhagavatam. Then Shuka Mahamuni re-narrates the entire Bhagavatam to Maharaja Parikshit. And finally, for a third time, the dissemination happens of the same Srimad Bhagavatam from Suta Pauranika to all the Maharishis for the benefit of mankind until Pralaya. This happens in Naimisharanya. The above slokam has to be amplified like this. The sum total of the creative elements is 24 in all. Each and every one of them is explicitly explained in the system of Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is generally called metaphysics by the European scholars. The etymological meaning of Sankhya is that which explains very lucidly by analysis of the material elements. This was done for the first time by Lord Kapila, who, as we saw now, to be the fifth in the line of divine incarnations. The word Sankhya is derived from the Sanskrit noun Sankhya, which is number, based on the verbal root kya, which means make known or name, with the proverb sum, which is together. Proverb sum is together. Sankhya thus denotes a system of enumeration or taking into account. Depending on the context, it means to reckon, to count, to enumerate, to calculate, to deliberate, to reason, reasoning by numeric enumeration, relating to number and rationale. Despite my best attempts to limit any duplication of this sentiment or explanation about Sankhya, because of the subject, you may hear that I will present myself in redefining certain words connected with Sankhya again and again, and pardon me for the duplication, because such duplication is unavoidable as we go along. Kapila Muni, the renowned author of Sankhya, which forms a significant part of India's ancient philosophical heritage. Sankhya is both a system of metaphysics, dealing with the elemental principles of the physical universe, and also a system of spiritual knowledge with its own methodology, culminating in full consciousness of the Supreme Absolute or Brahman. This topic was of great interest to our former President of India, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, as well as the greatest of seers of our modern times, Swami Vivekananda. Kapila, however, is not an ordinary philosopher or a sage. According to Vedic tradition and beliefs, as we saw, Kapila is an avatara or incarnation of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Kapila's teachings are originally inscribed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the most significant scriptural documentation of the great Vedic theism. Kapila's teachings are studied in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, as I mentioned earlier, once again between chapters 25 and 33. The 25th chapter begins with Kapila's teachings. The text begins with the words of Saunaka, the foremost of the vastly learned sages of Naimisharanya. The sages have already heard about Kapila Mahamuni from Suta Maharishi, an exalted spiritual head, and it is clear from Savanaka's words that they accept Kapila Muni as being an incarnation of Bhagavan himself and as therefore being the highest authority on yoga and transcendental knowledge. And recounting the history of Lord Kapila, Suta Maharishi, in accordance with Vedic principles for presenting spiritual knowledge, refers to discourse by great spiritual heads who have previously discussed this same subject. In this case, Suta Maharishi refers to a discussion between Vidura and the great sage Maitreya, about which I have spoken earlier. Both Vidura and Maitreya were great friends of Vedavyasa, the original compiler of all Vedic literature. Suta Maharishi describes that Lord Kapila appeared in this world as the son of Kardama Muni, a master of mystic yoga, and his wife Devahuti was blessed to have Kapila as her son. Nahi asya varshmanaha pumsam varimnaha sarva yoginam Pishrutau Shruta Devasya Bhuri Tripyanti Me Savaha. Savanaka says to Suta Pauranika, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature yogi than him. He is therefore the head of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure for all the senses. Both Karma Muni and Devahuti were aware of the divinity of their son Kapila. Indeed, even before Kapila's birth, Lord Brahma, the Hiranyagarbha, created by the supreme cosmic truth, had appeared before Devahuti and revealed to her that she would have the very incarnation of the Supreme Brahman as her own son, and that he would be enlightening her with spiritual knowledge for liberation.
Vanameyushi kartame prasanne Vanameyushi kartame prasanne Mata sarvasvamubadisan jananyai Vanameyushi kartame prasanne Mata sarvasvamubadisan jananyai Kapilatmakavayu mandiresha Varitam tvam Paripahi mam gadauga.
Bhattadri concludes this particular Dashakam 14 with this last slokam, Vanameyushi Kardame Prasanne Mata Sarvaswam Upadishanne Jananyai Kapilatmaka Vayu Mandiresha Twaritam Tvam Paripahimam Gadaugat. O Lord manifest in Guruvayur, தங்கள் திரு அவதாரத்தால் மகிழ்வுற்ற கர்தமர் வனமேகிய பின் தனது தாயாரால் பிரார்த்திக்கப்பட்டு தனது சனாதன தர்மத்தின் முடிவான பொருள்கள் அனைத்தையும் தன் தாய்க்கு உபதேசித்த கபில வாசுதேவ மூர்த்தியாக தோன்றிய என் குருவாயூரப்பா, என்னை இந்நோய் கூட்டத்தினின்றும் விரைவில் காத்தருள வேண்டும் என்று கதறுகிறார் பட்டதிரி. O Lord of Guruvayur, Kardama Prajapati was immensely happy at the birth of Bhagavan himself as his son. According to Brahma's advice, Kardama married off his 9 daughters to sages Marichi and other venerable rishis. Kala to Marichi, Anasuya to Atri, Shraddha to Angiras, Havirbhuvi to Pulastya, Gati to Pulaha, Kriya to Kratu, Kyati to Bhrigu, Arundhati to Vasishta, and Shanti to Atharva. Look at the illustrious names of the Maharishis. All of them get the gems, namely the 9 daughters of Kardama Prajapati. Then Kardama took to sannyasa with a sense of fulfillment and left for the forest to do the penance that he was earning for a long time to continue. According to the Vedic social system, a man with a grown son may accept the order of sannyasa, thus renouncing all his connections with his family and the worldly life and totally everything else, and entrust his wife to the care of his son. Kardama Muni, who knew that his son Kapila was none else than an incarnation of Supreme Bhagavan, nevertheless wanted to honor this Vedic tradition and emphasize its importance for generations to come by accepting sannyasa and entrusting his dharmic wife Devahuti to the care of his divine son Kapila. Therefore, as Suta Maharishi begins to answer Saunaka's request to hear further about Lord Kapila, the sages assembled in Naimisharanya have already been informed of how Kardama Muni departed for the forest, leaving Kapila behind with Devahuti. After Kardama Muni's departure, Devahuti, remembering the prophetic words of Lord Brahma, approaches her divine son to humbly express her desire for spiritual enlightenment. My Lord, this is how the mother calls the son Bhuman. Bhuman is my Lord. I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance, because you are my transcendental I, which, by your mercy only, I have attained after many births. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. This is the 7th slokam in chapter 25 of Bhagavatam 3rd canto. It goes like this. Devahutihi Vuvacha Nirvinnan itaram bhuman asat indriya darshanat Yena sambhavyamanena prapannandam tamaprabhoho. Pleased by his mother's pure desire for spiritual enlightenment and feeling great compassion for her, Kapila begins to speak on the Sankhya philosophy. To the extent that Sankhya deals with the elemental categories or principles of the physical universe, Sankhya is what Western scholars refer to as metaphysics, as I previously mentioned. The term Sankhya is used because Sankhya philosophy enumerates principles of cosmic evolution by rational analysis. This may be looking to be a complicated definition, but scholars have avowed to the conclusion that Sankhya enumerates principles of cosmic evolution by rational analysis. The etymological meaning of the word Sankhya is that which explains very lucidly by analysis of material elements. Philosophically, this term Sankhya is used because the system expounds analytical knowledge that enables one to distinguish between matter and spirit. This understanding culminates in bhakti, devotion for and service to the Lord Supreme. It may be said, therefore, that Sankhya and bhakti form two aspects of the same process. Bhakti being the ultimate goal or ultimate aspect of Sankhya. Bhattacharya thus concludes the Dasakam with Kapila's birth, Kardama Rishi's sannyasa, and Devahuti's questions, and answers to which form the revered Kapila Gita, the 397 slokams stated in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3. God willing, we will not only go in detail as to Bhattacharya's summarization of the questions and answers in just about 10 slokams in the next Dasakam, but also see the deeper references in Bhagavatam and other works on a concurrent basis. Since it is almost impossible to do justice to about 400 gems of Kapila Gita in about 60 minutes, we might enjoy those pearls spread over 2 to 3 sessions. Kapilatmaka Vayu Mandiresa Tvaritam Tvam Paripahimam Gadaugat. This is the 10th sloka, final part, which we just now heard. O Lord of Guruvayur, you instructed Devahuti, your mother, and a great devotee, on the very principles of which the philosophy called Sankhya propounded by you, for which you had incarnated as Kapila Vasudeva. Please protect me soon from the host of ailments that afflict me. Before we move on to further intense philosophical elaborations of Kapila's Sankhya philosophy in the next session, let me step back a bit. Kapilopakyanam and Kapila Gita have triggered several questions, but due to paucity of time, I will limit my answers to bare minimum by addressing the main ones. There are frequent references to many Gitas. Are they similar, comparable, or just repeats from the Bhagavad Gita? This is one question often posed to me. Why the term Gita is suffixed to many of the teachings for many others, and where do they show in our scriptures, and what are their respective origins and specific topics or references? Thanks to my father, my Adiguru, Kumaramangalam Srinivasa-Raghavan, also known as Ragasri, I happened to read on Bala Gangadhara Tilak, who lived between 1856 and 1920, and his background when I was about 16 years of age, and my first detailed introduction to Bhagavad Gita was through Lokmanya Tilak. As many of you may have heard the name, Tilak was one of the revered legal scholars of modern India, respected by even British solicitors and barristers. He was the first leader of Indian independence movement with the revered title Lokmanya, briefly meant revered by his people as the leader. And Gandhiji called Tilak the maker of modern India, while the British called him the father of the Indian unrest. Tilak's repeated yet unwavering message was religion and practical life should be approached with real spirit, ensuring that your country is your family instead of expecting it to work for you and your families or the other way. More than 41 years after Tilak's passing away, President John F. Kennedy gave the inaugural address of his presidency in 1961 with the very same profound statement quoted until today. What Bal Gangadhar Tilak said was, religion and practical life should be approached with the real spirit, ensuring that your country is your family instead of expecting religion to work for you and your families, or the country to work for you and your families. John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I said this often, that some of the pearls of wisdom, or quite a few pearls of wisdom that are now being repeated by great men and scholars in the world for the last 400-500 years in the civilized world, have come from Sanatana Dharma, from great scholars, sannyasis, sants, and acharyas. This is one such example. It was my father who pointed this strange coincidence to me with a small Tamil book on Tilak called Gita Rahasya, as I was preparing for an oratory on Gita for an Indian University meet way back in the 1960s. Tilak said, the steps to divinity are those serving the humanity which lead to selfless service to God. How pertinent is the advice in today's context, especially in the United States for the last few years? He quoted Bhagavad Gita to exhort the slaves of India to fight for their dharma, the liberation of the nation first, and then their souls. Emulating Chhatrapati Shivaji, the British sentenced Tilak on the accusation that he is an agitator for more than 6 years, 1908 to 1914, to Mandalay prison in Burma, which is modern-day Myanmar. Under such extreme rigorous conditions where he was tortured and despite failing health, Lokamanya wrote Gita Rahasya and got them sold for money for Indian independence movement. Not like the current day politicians who didn't know the name of some of the holy books, but still try to sell them at exorbitant price with some interpolations of their own without knowing what they are selling, only for money. But Lokamanya did it the other way. He wrote Gita Rahasya, sold them for money, all right, but that was all going to Indian independence movement because that was holy for Lokamanya. Swami Vivekananda and Tilak had profound mutual respect and esteem for one another since they first met in 1892, and they both agreed that Vivekananda would work for nationalism in the religious arena, while Tilak would work for nationalism in the political arena. Gita Rahasya, originally published in 1915 in Marathi, was translated in many languages, and my father had 2 volumes of the English translation, totaling about 1,457 pages, published in 1930. Having lost those and many other 19th century publications to termites over the decades, I was lucky and able to get both volumes about 20 plus years ago as scans from global universities and found references by Tilak in his Rahasya to about 40 other Gitas. Most of you may have heard of many similar names or familiar names, on one of which is the renowned Kapila Gita. For the benefit of those who express curiosity, I'll mention only a few of the Gitas here, but the rest of them I'll at least put them in a slide which you can see as I talk. But kindly see the slide which will run for a while, listing those various Gitas and also where they appear. Due to paucity of time, I'm going to limit the details. Rama Gita is the more common Gita in the 5th Sarga of Uttarakanda of Adhyatma Ramayana, which is part of Brahmanda Purana. The second one is common in Tamil Nadu, found in Guru Jnana Vasishta Tattva Sharayana, or 3 parts or kanda in this text, namely knowledge, which is jnana, spiritual practice, which is upasanas, and actions, karma. There, the Rama Gita has 18 chapters in the second pada of Upasana Kanda. Anugita is from Mahabharata, Ashwamedha Parva, Adhyaya 16. Ashtavakra Gita is a conversation between King Janaka and Ashtavakra. Ishwara Gita is from Kumara Purana. Uddhava Gita or Amsa Gita, which we'll be seeing very soon while we go to Narayana Tirtha's Krishnalila Tarangini next. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, chapters 6 to 29, about 1,000 slokams. Kapila Gita is from Adhyaya 23 to 33 of 3rd Skandam of Bhagavata Purana, which we are going to see very soon. Ganesha Gita from Krida Khanda of Ganesha Purana, Adhyaya 138 to 148, closer to Bhagavad Gita format and contents. Deva Gita is Adhyaya 31 through 40, 7th Kanda of Devi Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita, as you all know, is from Adhyaya 25 to 42 of Bhishma Parva from Mahabharata. Brahma Gita is from Skanda Purana. Brahmana Gita is part of Anu Gita mentioned earlier. Bhikshu Gita is Srimad Bhagavata Purana. Ramana Gita is, of course, modern Kali Yuga Gita. Bhagavan Ramana's disciple Kavya Kanta Ganapati Muni wrote in Sanskrit based on Maharishi Ramana's dialogue with various disciples in Sanskrit. There are many more Gitas like Vyasa Gita, Vrutra Gita, Shiva Gita, Shiva Champaka Gita, Suta Gita, Surya Gita, Hari Gita, Hamsa Gita, which I talked about earlier, Harita Gitaha, Buddha Gitaha, Jayante Gita, Adhyatma Gita, Rudra Gita, which again is Srimad Bhagavatam. So many are there. You can see in the list that is produced there in the slide. We will soon see Dasakam 15, which deals with message of Kapila or Kapilobhakyanam, whereafter Kapila's teachings are explained in the form of a dialogue between Mother Devahuti and Bhagavan, Sakshat Bhagavan in the form of Kapila. In those 10 slokas, Bhattadri explains the entire Bhakti Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. By these teachings known as Kapilobhadeshaha, the core of Srimad Bhagavata Mahapuranam, Bhagavan Kapila in fact expounds to the people oppressed by the threefold miseries of samsara, the Sankhya philosophy, and the path of devotion under the pretext of tutoring his own mother Devahuti. This is the summary of chapters 25 to 32 in Book 3 of Srimad Bhagavata Puranam, as I mentioned earlier, and we will look into all of them in the next coming sessions. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Napane Guruvairappa.
Narayana 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 Narayana